Hey everybody, it's your boy Sando here with a quick build video, quick update build video here for the New World Brimstone Sands update here for the heavy armor sword and shield greatsword build that I've been running and liking a lot. Let's go ahead and get into it. Alright, cool. So we're going to start with the weapon first here, starting with Defiant side. I'm using these perks here. Go ahead and go through them. Perfect Vigilance, so you get Fortify when you get hit from full health. Blade Honing, so you get a little bit extra damage. Weary Posture, so when you go into Defiant Stance, your first hit take within 5 seconds has reduced damage. And then Unflinching Blade here for the bleed with heavy attack. We do a lot of heavy attacks here on this build. And in Faultless Defender here, so we do have the Greatsword out, we can block and take reduced stamina damage. Starting with the first skill here, we're using Roaring Rupture. It's a great ability. I was kind of on the fence about it at first before using it. It gives you Fortify, it does a weaken, it does a lot of good things for you. Let's go ahead and see why. It also cleanses 2 debuffs, which is really huge each time you cast it here. If you're fighting in a clump or fighting a large group of people here, there will be a bunch of debuffs going out from healing reduction, armor reduction with rend, all kinds of things here. This will help get those off you as quickly as possible. We also take the perk here, Intimidating Roar, to apply the weaken to all the enemies around, making us tankier while having that weaken up. I don't necessarily use the adaptive rush, the adaptive rupture, mainly because we don't really have enough points here in order to get it, in order to maintain our onslaught side of the tree for our damage. Our greatsword on this build is going to be the main attacking weapon. So let's go ahead and get into how we're doing that here. We're taking heavy blade here so we get more armor penetration. Keen posture so that we do get a critical attack once gaining onslaught stance. I will note here the critical damage from Greatsword is not the best. It has one of the lowest, well, the second lowest critical modifiers of 1.25, which is 0.05 above the Warhammer, which is 1.2. So take note of that. This just procs our other passives here. The main one we wanted to proc here is Critical Comeback, which will give us stamina and 5% of our base health for 5 seconds, which is really good. And then also 2, we have Step and Strike, which gives us a 10% in power for the next 3 hits within 10 seconds, and also gives us 10 stamina on hit for each attack that's empowered by this ability. That is really good. That allows us in heavy to keep up our stamina and to be able to dodge and move around. The first skill we take here in this side of the tree is going to be Crosscut. This is a really good ability. This takes some time to learn and how to use it. The main thing with this one here is that most of the time if I'm using it and if I'm in a group of people, I'm either going to start the crosscut on someone I'm not going to finish it on, and I'm going to quickly switch to the other target that's getting low and then hit them with the execute side of it. So you gain grit while you have this skill active. Also 2, this is the execute from when you're in onslaught stance here, which you definitely want to be using this from onslaught stance. You don't want to take the 15% reduced damage while in defiant stance while having this ability activated. All stances switch at the end of the ability. So you want to definitely make sure, it's definitely a learning curve, but once you get it down, it's actually pretty good. And next up here, we have the Skyward Slash. This is a very good fully loaded ability here, which is why I could not pass it up. It applies rend, it staggers the first enemy you hit. You can do a second hit, but you can also fake out the second hit. This is the follow-up attack, does 140 weapon damage, and then this is the AoE of it here, and also too it gives the first attack the disease as well, reducing their healing by 20% for 10 seconds. That is a lot. So basically you're hitting this into a lot of people, you're going to be able to apply the disease on them and reduce their healing coming in. It also increases the radius. Also too, wanted to talk about why I don't use Relentless Rush. It is a good ability. It does a lot of stuff for you here. It allows you to move forward. You can get empower from it. You can get cooldown reduction. You can get healing from it. The main thing is that if you're using this to get into the group here, you're having to drop something else. And these other 2 abilities are just too good to pass up. I've hit the execute on people, and that's been enough to finish them off from almost 75% health for light armor targets. It's just too good to pass up. Also, too, we have a perk that goes along with the crosscut as well, and then Skyward Slash here has a lot of good benefits as well, which you do need the rend in order to put in some decent damage to your target. And then the final one here, we are going to take this ultimate here. As much as I would like to take the healing one, it just doesn't hold up to having your abilities up all the time, which is what this is going to allow you to do here. So it's basically like having a refreshing move, but if you hit a charge heavy attack, which we're doing a lot, you get 10% reduction, which keeps all the other abilities active as much as you can. Going on to the next weapon here, which is the sword. I've been using the sword and shield for a while, and this is the wrong skill tree. I was tanking a little bit. We are going to go ahead and set this up now. Great. So looking over this skill tree here, we dropped Defiant Stance, or Defender's Resolve is what it's now called, mainly because this will more than likely get us killed while casting it. It does have a place, but there's too many other things that we use that we need to get benefit out of in order to use this here. The perks here for blocking, really good. The sword and shield on this build is mainly used for debuffing and blocking incoming range attacks, and mainly if you need to, we can chase down the enemy here. We are getting back stamina when we use a shield rush or a shield bash, which are both two skills that we use, so we do have a way to regain stamina. 10% increased healing and regeneration is great. You always want to make sure you pop a pot or a potion on your sword and shield bar. Shield rush here is one that it takes some time to learn how to use. What you do, it is actually a really good ability. What it does weaken as well, which is similar to the Roaring Rupture that we use on the Greatsword. Also, too, it allows a slow. So that is very key. It slows. It is a major slow. You hit this on people and they will be almost in a RP walking motion. And also too, this does stack with the new light armor changes here, that when you get hit in light or medium armor here and in heavy, you have a delayed distance in which you can dodge, and you are stuck in a walking animation for a certain amount of time. This right here will cause it to be a lot worse on that person, so that way you can go ahead and get the other attacks off as well. We take Shield Bash here. Shield Bash is a move that is an essential for the sword and shield. It's such a long stun. We don't increase it here because most likely it will get hit by someone else and they'll get taken out of it, and those will be wasted points. But the main thing is here, this is your, I'm getting pushed by someone that is being very aggressive, and I need to slow them down to regain control of the fight. We also are gaining more armor, and then 10% reduction from all magical type attacks. Really good. Next up here, we're taking the Achilles heel. This one right here is super good. The final light attack in your chain and fix it 20% slow. Like I said, you want to try to keep people slow as much as possible to keep them near you so that you can attack that target. Free Injustice. I took this over Precision because hitting that heavy attack is something else that we're going to go over why we want to do that. But basically, we'll run one debuff, which is the main thing you want to do in this build is keep as many debuffs off you as you can. That has a ton of benefits here. On this build, Rend is your enemy. I know I say it all the time to some of my company mates, but if I get hit with an Armor Breaker, my first instinct is to disengage and wait till that timer goes off or try to cleanse that buff off of me. Rend is very bad because if you take away the armor with heavy armor, you don't have any other kind of mitigation such as speed to get out or clear distance from that opponent, and which is going to more than likely end up getting you killed. That's why we also take mobility so that we can block and move a little bit faster. And also to critical precision, where you gain haste for 5 seconds after a critical attack. And then leaping strike here, one of my favorite moves here. Basically it's like a gap closer here, and it does a pretty decent amount of damage. You'd be very surprised, but it also does have a slow as well attached to it. Now let's go ahead and get into the gear. The gear on this build, I'm running 2-piece shirking heals with critical retribution, sturdy energy for gaining stamina back after you block an attack on a 30% stamina. This is very good. It helps regain your stamina after blocking. And then we have Empowered Breaker, a really good perk here, especially with a lot of people using the Greatsword. The Defiant Stance has a charge shield that comes up if you heavy attack, and hitting that shield will also proc Empowered Breaker. I'm not saying you want to, because you get a 5% rend per each hit you do, but with a lot of sword and board light armor targets running around, just getting one hit on their shield or any shield will give you that Empower. That Empower also does stay if you do weapon swap, unlike that change they made to Keenly Empower with this recent update. I'm running 2-piece Freedom as well, with 3-piece Shirking Forward, 2-piece Shirking Heals. You would want to shoot for 3 Freedom, and then have the Shirking Forward and definitely 5-piece Resil mandatory. So these are my 2 Shirking Forward and Freedom pieces, as well as Resil. If you didn't have Shirking Fortification, there's some blue pieces you can just get with just Resilient Shirking Fortification, and you do just fine. Just if you can, try to go ahead and get in at least a few freedoms in there, because you will notice a difference in how you're able to escape. If anything, it reduces the slow time here as well, and for stuns and roots. So just keep that in mind. The shield that I'm currently using right now is one with Fortifying Shield Rush. Using Shield Rush here, you can get Fortify, which is really good. Hitting 2 targets here doubles that Fortify to 66%. Sturdy on the shield is mandatory. You have to have Sturdy on there. It is the biggest game changer for not letting your stam deplete and being able to take those extra hits on your shield. The next one here is one that everybody that's using a shield should be using as far as a tower shield. Is Sturdy Fortification. It is very, very good. It stacks with the Sword and Shield passive here. Defensive training, for when you take a block, you gain a 10% fortify for 10 seconds. It will proc at the same time as Sturdy Fortification. If you max that all the way out with blocking 5 hits, also to each block refreshes the timer on it for defensive training and Sturdy Fortification, you will get up to a maximum of 30% fortify on your character. Next up is one of the amulets I use here. I'll go over the other one in a second. We use Divine Health, Shirking Power. It just goes with the Shirking Fortification and Shirking Heals. And also to the Great Sword perk here for Step and Stride. When you dodge and attack, gain 10% in power. And then also in your amulet here, when you dodge and attack, you gain a 4% in power for 10 seconds. This can be refreshed, and it can stack up very nicely. Next one is one I've been using here. Mortal Empowerment is the better choice, or a slash damage perk. I also do have a slash ring as well. For slash damage, that's really good. If you don't have Mortal Empower, you can farm this in Heliopolis. It's actually really good. There's also another one that has leeching on it as well, which I would probably prefer. Leeching is one of my main perks that I do like to have on one of my rings. At times I will kind of toss it to the side a little bit, but I definitely need the leeching on there for being able to survive in those clump fights. The next perk we have here is Hardy, which is kind of mandatory. It's kind of not in this build a little bit, because we are using some passives that kind of make up for it, but it is always good to have more max stamina. That way when you're blocking, also too, it helps for Sturdy Energy proc a little bit higher because you have a higher maximum, so that means the percentage of that is a little bit higher. But this ring you can farm here would still be good if you were just trying to recreate the build. The last one here for the armor here is the earring. Healthy Toast is very good. Drinking a mana potion here, you get 7.9% of your max health back. Combined with Divine, it helps just uplift that a little bit more. Refreshing Toast is mandatory to keep that potion cooldown up when you really need it. And then Regenerating is also another mandatory perk for me, just to have that base regen ticking at all times. And also, since we are in heavy armor with a little bit extra health, we are going to see the maximum benefit of that. Moving on to the sword here, this is one that I picked up here. Empowering Leaping Strike is very, very good. It should be a perk that you're looking for on the sword. It helps out a ton. The Keen is, you know, it's kind of a bonus. I'm not really too worried about it. But the main thing on here is a Transient Rend. So completing a fully charged heavy attack gives a rend of 14%. That is massive for just a heavy attack. It's very close to an armor breaker, or at most rends are 10% for a single hit. This is 14. This is very good. All I usually do is do a shield bash into a sword heavy. It may not seem like a lot of damage to them, but the thing is, it's a setup and a debuff for our Greatsword bar, so that we can really get some big damage on that target. Next up, here's a sword that I crafted here. I'll also go over another one that I use as well. This is the one I got when I farmed, which is basically like Bloodsucker's sword, but instead of enchanted, we have Trinsic Strikes. I believe Trinsic Strikes is going to be a best in slot perk on any great sword, just because in onslaught stance your heavy attacks are so much faster, and also too, doing the heavy attacks you start stacking the bleeds, and you can proc the ultimate here, which is giving you a 10% cooldown per heavy attack. This is very, very good. Also, it combined with Leeching Crosscut. The final hit will heal you for 17% of your health. This is huge for your sustainability in a group fight. Also, too, we have life stealing on this one, so this is almost literally an identical copy of Bloodsucker's Greatsword, but with Trinsic Strikes, which is really, really good. Life stealing as well stacks with leeching, and it somewhat interacts with divine. Not exactly the 9.8%, but it does help as far as having leeching on there. Actually, while we're on it, let's go ahead and go over the gems I'm running and why. For this patch here, I was using the full leeching for the full lifesteal. The full lifesteal at most will only get you up to 18, I think like 18-20%. But if you use leeching and lifestealing for that 10% base on your greatsword here and on your ring, I use actually the punishing, which increases your melee damage. So if you are going to get 1% extra lifesteal, if you do 1% extra damage per piece, that would add up to the same lifesteal amount here, or maybe even more with the multipliers, because you'll be able to do a lot more damage. Also too, if you are fighting another greatsword or another weapon that does have some sort of disease on it, such as this one here with Skyward Slash, the 20% is more than what your lifesteal is going to be able to do, so it doesn't really affect your lifesteal as much. So definitely I would go with the punishing for the gems, and as far as your resistances, just try to get them as close to even as you can, and I'll actually show another setup that I run here as well. But the Heart Rune gem that I'm running is a Stalwart Stone form for fortifying form and mending form. This is a great get out of jail free card, where if you're in a group and if you need to reposition, you can freely reposition with this Heart Rune. Going up to the other items that I do use when I do PvP, I will run this one sometimes. Having slash protection, fortified in itself is a great perk, as well as the slash protection gives you a lot more beefiness. And the health here is a mandatory perk on the amulet. The fortified here has strange interactions with a lot of these perks. It increases sturdy fortification. It increases the time on defender's resolve now. It increases the time on defensive training. It increases every fortification. So the shield, shirking, fortification, it brings up to 8 seconds. It just increases everything. It also too increases the fortifying form duration as well. So as far as the fortify from it. So what else do we have here? If you didn't want to do the shirking hills 2 here, I do have 2 other pieces of shirking fortification and resilient. 5 shirking fort does work pretty well. This I saw a little bit more survivability with having those 2 shirking heals on there as well. Let's go ahead and jump into the stats here, since the stats on mine are pretty messed up now. And I'm actually using the Fall Harvest Turkey. Alright, here comes the scary part of the build. We don't have grit. We fight in clumps with no grit. There are things that can give us grit. Going back to the sword here, the reason why we do run Roaring Rupture, it gives us uninterruptible. Uninterruptible is basically you can't be stunned with a shockwave, you can't be knocked down with a sweep. You're basically uninterruptible for 5 seconds. That's really good. That's what you want to base your opener on if you're opening into a large group of people, which I'll go over that combo in just a second here. But back to the stats. I run 166 strength, 150 dexterity, 200 constitution. Main things because we get 10% more melee basic attack strength, 5% more slashing, and then 25% more stamina damage from blocking. This is something that I was on the fence about, but I did end up using and actually ended up liking because you will run into a couple of the shield players where you don't want to be hitting like a wet noodle to their stamina bars, so you want to be able to do some damage to their stamina. For the dexterity, you get the 10% critical hit, which also helps proc the Greatsword passives. Your 5% thrust damage, which is only for your heavy attacks on your sword and shield bar. And then also to the big one, you get 10% less stamina cost here. This is really big in heavy armor. It makes your dodges 40 stamina, which is huge, and allows you to be able to use that during your combat a lot more effectively. For the Constitution, we run 200 con for these basic perks here, mainly for the increased health, the 10% critical damage taken, and then the 10% physical and elemental armor. The main way of playing this build is you have to know that you don't have grit. You do have an interruptible that you can proc, but you need to pick your position and basically stick to it. Always know your escape and always try to fight around line of sight. The main opener when I am fighting is, you'll see in the videos here, I will usually exhaust my leaping strike if I need to get into a group. I will save the shield bash here because that's kind of, if someone's pressuring you, you can shield bash them and get them off you. After you leap and strike into the group here, what I like to do is I like to hit the shield rush here, proc to fortify. If I need to reposition or get into a spot where I know I can hit a lot of people with the greatsword, I'll let that fortify linger. If you swap, the fortify does go away. Next up, I will then go into the sword bar. Immediately after I do that, get into Defiant Stance. That way you have your reduced hit. Find the target you want to hit them with a Scatter Slash. That will rend them up. It'll also put you in the Onslaught Stance. From Onslaught Stance, you can hit some heavies. You have 10 seconds in the stance. The main thing is, when you see your target, you want to hit them with the crosscut. So to go over that again, since the abilities are up, as far as using your skills, you come in. The main combo here is the Shield Bash. It's a big radius as far as the weaken. If you look at the perk here, all enemies within 5 meters are weakened, and then you're going to hit your Roaring Rupture, which is a 4-meter radius. So it's a very big radius. They're going to be weakened by 20% and slowed. So to do that again, shield rush in, Roaring Rupture, now you're uninterruptible. You can safely hit your Skyward Slash. You can be staggered out of the second hit, and you can go to town with your heavies, and until you find your target, where you're going to hit the crosscut, which is also going to do your leeching, and then you can go from there. But a lot of it is mainly just the light and heavy attacks, mainly the heavy attacks from the Greatsword bar. Oh, I almost forgot here to go over which gems I'm using here. I'm going to be changing this one here. I was trying out the Punishing Gambit. I believe the opal with nature damage is going to be the most effective. It is similar to where I had it in one. I have it in this one here. The Electrified Gambit, or like the nature one where you do the dot damage, which is 8% damage here, and then you have the opal here as well for 12% damage while your stamina is not full, which is perfect because anytime you use a heavy attack, your stamina is not full, which gives you that extra full damage. On the sword here, I do like to use the retaliate here because it does state you regain the 15% damage after taking a hit, but you regain 4 stamina. That way, since we're having the light attacks be pretty quick, it does have a 2-second cooldown here. What we can do is we need to hit a shield bash and a light attack. We regain a lot of stamina that way as well, until we get out our sword bar and regain more stamina. So that's from this passive here. Alright, and what else are we missing here? Are we missing anything else? I think that's pretty much it. There are a couple other shields that I run here. If I do another setup here, I will run a shield with slash protection on it. Since this is a name shield from the PvP track, since it doesn't drop with sturdy, there's another item from the Outpost Rust cache, which is called Illusionary Enigma. It does have sturdy on the sword, so you can run that, and that way you can still have your sword and shield bar with sturdy on it. The sword and shield bar is mainly not for damage, so you want to make sure you do have the buffs that will make you have more tankiness, which equals your survivability. What else? In addition to the shield with the slash protection on it, my slash protection amulet here, like I said, this is more of a tanky setup. That way you can hit 29% slash damage even with the new gems that do take away from your defense. So with all the slash damage out there, you can definitely be a little bit tankier if you are running, let's say, without a heal or anything like that. And the main thing is Invigorated Punishment is just not functioning correctly, so I would not really run that at the moment, unless you can test it yourself and see, but from my testing here I was not able to get it to have a significant uplift. I know one thing people always ask is, why do I run the defensive formation? It's mainly because it gives you 30% damage reduction here. The reason why I run it is because I'm fighting in large groups of people here, or I'm like on the point of the large group of people. So that 30%, it applies to behind me as well. Also too, if I get hit with a poison shot or something that's going to leave a dot on me, I can block, and that dot now gets 30% reduced damage. It's really good for staying alive when we need to heal up. You can definitely pop a regen potion, do that, and then that way the healing potion will outweigh the dots. And that's pretty much it. So hopefully I made that as quickly as possible and ran through anything. If anybody has any questions, you can comment below and I'll try to respond to you to go ahead and get that answer for you. Alright, you guys have a good one. Take it easy.